All right, get ready because today we are going deep into some really, really mind-bending stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Edmund Husserl's The Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness.
Big one.
Now, that title,
Yeah.
I know it can sound a little intimidating, but trust me.
It is.
This deep dive is going to, I think, change how you think about time.
For sure.
And maybe even reality itself.
What's so interesting here is we're working with a collection of Husserl's lectures.
Okay.
And they come from a really key point in his career.
Right.
Between the logical investigations and his later, much more famous work, The Ideas.
So we've got excerpts straight for the book.
Yes.
And that includes some really insightful commentary from the introduction by Martin Heidegger.
That's right.
Talk about,
Heavyweight.
philosophical heavyweights, right?
Yeah.
And then also a few of those thought-provoking appendices that Husserl was known for.
Oh, yes. He also loves an appendix.
He does.
Yeah. These lectures are really interesting because they show this this crucial kind of shift in his thinking. He's really wrestling with this concept of intentionality. Yeah. This idea that our consciousness isn't just this kind of blank slate, but it's always directed towards something.
Oh, interesting.
It's directed towards an object, and that's a really kind of radical concept that influenced a whole generation of philosophers after him.
So today's mission, to unpack how Husserl breaks down our experience of time.
Right.
We're talking the now, the past.
Yeah.
And even how our memories kind of fit into this whole puzzle.
Yes.
Get ready for some aha moments, folks.
So I think it's important to keep in mind that Husserl actually begins by taking on the theories of his own teacher, Franz Brentano.
Oh, wow.
Who believed that our experience of time was basically like a kind of chain of memories that are linked to what we perceive in the present moment.
So kind of like a mental highlight reel of our lives.
Exactly. Brentano called this primordial association.
Got it.
But Husserl saw some serious flaws in that logic.
Okay.
He argued, well, if time is just this string of memories, how do we grasp that feeling that the past is actually past?
Right.
It can't just be a fainter version of the present. Right.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
It makes me think about, like, listening to music, right?
Yes.
We experience a melody as a whole.
Yes.
Not just as a series of individual notes.
Right.
Did he use examples like that?
He did, yeah.
Okay.
He argues that if we were only experiencing, like, memories of individual notes, there'd be no sense of this kind of melody unfolding in time, right? There has to be something more at play.
Okay, so how does Husserl define time consciousness?
Yeah.
Forget clocks, forget calendars.
That's right.
We're talking about how we actually experience time, that lived experience.
So Husserl makes this really important distinction between what he calls objective time, which is what we measure with clocks, right? And then what he calls phenomenological time, which is our lived experience of time, how we experience time.
Right.
And he says this phenomenological time, that's fundamental.
Right.
That's how we actually understand the world.
So instead of just measuring the seconds ticking by, it's about how our minds are actively kind of creating our sense of time.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, and here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Husserl introduces these two crucial concepts, retention and protention, to explain how this happens.
All right, so let's unpack these terms.
Yes.
Retention sounds like it has something to do with memory.
It does, but it's more immediate than memory.
Okay.
Retention is that lingering presence of the immediate past. It's how we hold on to what just happened, even as it's slipping away.
So, like, if I were to quickly wave a sparkler in the dark, right?
Yeah.
You'd still see that trail of light even after the sparkler has moved.
Right.
That's retention.
Perfect example, yeah. That image lingers because of retention.
Okay, yeah.
Now, pretension is kind of the flip side of that.
Right.
It's our anticipation of the immediate future.
Right.
And get this.
Yeah.
Pretension actually shapes how we experience the present moment.
Wait, so you're saying my mind is reaching into the future and that's influencing what I'm experiencing right now?
Think about it this way. When you know a loud noise is coming, you might brace yourself, right?
Right.
That's pretension in action.
Oh, wow.
You're already kind of experiencing the future in the present.
So I'm never actually just in the now.
Right.
You're saying.
You're never just in the now.
Oh.
Your mind is always reaching into the past and the future, shaping your current experience.
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So where does memory fit into all of this?
Right.
We've got retention, this immediate past, but what about those memories from, way back?
Yeah, so memory is actually distinct from retention for Husserl. It involves reliving a past experience, but in a way that's modified by our current perspective.
So it's not just a replay.
Yeah.
But it's our interpretation of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And Husserl even differentiates between what he calls primary remembrance, which is essentially retention.
Okay.
And then secondary remembrance, which is that act of actively recalling a memory.
So even when I'm remembering something from years ago,
yes,
I'm actually experiencing that act of remembering in the present moment.
Precisely.
Interesting.
And this kind of highlights the complex interplay of past, present, and future in our experience of time, right? It's not a simple linear flow,
right,
but a dynamic weaving together of these different dimensions.
This is starting to feel like a philosophical puzzle.
Yeah.
You've got these layers of time influencing each other.
Yeah.
Retention, pretension, and memory.
Right.
But how do they all come together to form our experience of the world around us?
Yeah.
How do we perceive objects in time?
That's where things get even more fascinating.
Okay.
So Husserl argues that our perception of objects isn't just this passive receiving of information, but this active process of construction.
Oh, interesting.
He uses this word constitute
to
describe how our consciousness actually gives meaning to what we perceive.
So it's not just what we see, but how we understand what we see.
Exactly.
Like, my mind isn't just taking a snapshot of a tree.
Yeah.
It's actively creating my experience of that tree.
Exactly. And time is crucial to this process, right?
Yeah.
Husserl says our consciousness is constantly weaving together past, present, and future to create this kind of complete picture of the world.
Wow.
Retention gives us a sense of continuity. Pretension gives us a sense of direction. And memory allows us to connect our present experience to our past.
So hold on.
Yeah.
Are you saying that when I look at a tree, I'm not just seeing the tree right now, I'm also bringing in my past experiences with trees, my knowledge of how trees grow, and even my expectations of how it might change in the future?
You got it.
Wow.
And Husserl describes these kind of layers of past and future that influence our present perception as the horizons of our experience.
So they're always there, shaping how we see the world?
They're always there.
This is seriously changing how I think about perception.
Yeah.
It's so much more active and dynamic than I realized.
It's not just what's in front of you, but how your mind is actively creating this temporal experience.
This is getting deep.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah.
And we've only just begun to explore the depths of Husserl's thinking on time.
All right, I'm ready to dive deeper, but before we do, let's take a step back.
Okay.
And revisit Brentano's theory of time.
Okay.
Did Husserl completely throw it out the window?
Not entirely.
Okay.
He acknowledges that primordial association, that kind of chain of memories, played some role in our experience of time. But he argued it's not the whole story, right?
Right.
Brentano's theory, it just lacked the depth to explain how we actually experience the past as past, not just as a weaker version of the present.
It's like saying a memory is just a less intense version of a perception.
Yeah.
It doesn't capture that feeling of something having already happened.
Exactly, yeah. That's where Husserl's ideas of retention and pretension, and this active constitution of time, that's where they come in.
Okay.
They add this complexity and nuance to our understanding of time.
So it's not a simple linear chain of memories. But a much more dynamic and fluid process.
Precisely.
Wow.
It's this constant weaving together of past, present, and future happening all the time, even when we're not aware of it.
This is blowing my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff.
We're starting to get a glimpse into the depths of Husserl's thinking about time.
We're getting there.
But there's clearly so much more to explore.
Oh, yeah.
There is.
I'm hooked.
I'm glad.
Stay tuned, because in the next part of our deep dive, we'll explore how Husserl's ideas about time connect to his concept of intentionality.
That's right.
And how they ultimately shape our perception of the world.
It's all connected.
All right, we'll see you in part 2.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Husserl's Phenomenology of internal time consciousness.
It's exciting stuff.
It is. We're really getting into the weeds here of how our minds make sense of time.
Yeah, we're exploring some pretty complex concepts.
We are.
How our experience of time is different from just clock time.
Right.
The roles of retention and pretension.
Yeah.
And then this really wild idea that our consciousness is actively shaping our experience of time.
Right, and last time we kind of left off on this cliffhanger.
Yeah.
How all of this connects to Husserl's concept of intentionality.
Yeah, big idea.
I feel like we need a little refresher on what exactly that means.
Yeah, so think of intentionality this way.
Your consciousness is always about something.
Okay.
It's always directed towards something.
Hmm.
So when you see a tree, right,
Yeah.
your mind isn't just passively registering an image.
Okay.
Your consciousness is actively engaged with that tree.
Yeah.
It's about that tree.
So it's like our minds are always reaching out,
Yeah.
connecting with the world around us.
That's right.
Whether it's something we're seeing, remembering, or even just imagining.
Exactly.
Okay.
Husserl believed this aboutness is a fundamental feature of consciousness. It's what sets it apart from just physical processes in the brain.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it's what makes consciousness consciousness.
I'm starting to see how this ties into time, right?
Yeah.
If our consciousness is always directed towards something,
Right.
that something could be in the past, present, or even the future.
Precisely. Time isn't separate from our intentional acts. It's woven into the very fabric of how we experience the world.
So when we talk about retention and pretension,
Yeah.
we're not just talking about like abstract mental processes,
No.
but about how our consciousness is intentionally reaching out to the past and the future.
Yes.
Wow.
Retention isn't just passively holding on to the past.
Right.
It's an active, intentional process of bringing the past into the present.
Okay.
And pretension is more than just vaguely anticipating what's coming next.
Right.
It's an intentional reaching out towards the future, shaping our current experience with those expectations.
This is making me rethink how I even read a book.
Oh, yeah.
My understanding of what I'm reading right now is shaped by what I've already read.
Right.
Retention.
Yeah.
And by what I think is going to happen next.
Pretension.
Pretension, exactly.
Yeah, it's a great example of how these concepts are constantly at play in our everyday lives.
Totally.
We're not just passively observing the world.
Right.
We're actively engaging with it.
Yeah.
Across time.
Right.
Through our consciousness.
So let's bring memory into the mix here. We talked about primary remembrance, which is like retention.
Right.
And then secondary remembrance, which is that act of recalling a memory.
Yeah.
Are those also intentional acts?
Absolutely. Every time you remember something, your consciousness is intentionally directed towards that past experience. You're not just receiving an image or a feeling. You're actively reconstructing and reliving that memory.
But how is that different from simply having a perception in the present?
Right?
Is there something unique about how memory uses intentionality?
Yeah, Husserl argues that there is.
Okay.
He says that memory involves this kind of modification of the original experience. It's not an exact replica,
Right.
but a representation of the past,
Okay.
shaped by our current understanding and our current perspective.
It's like looking at an old photograph,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
It captures a moment from the past, but it's also filtered through the lens of who we are now.
exactly.
You might notice things that we didn't see before.
Yeah.
Or understand the event differently based on what we know now.
That's right. And that modification is really what makes the intentionality of memory so unique.
Okay.
It's directed towards the past, but it's shaped by the present.
Wow. This is really coming together.
Yeah.
Intentionality, time consciousness, retention, protention, memory.
Yeah.
They're all intertwined, shaping how we experience the world around us.
Right.
It's amazing how much is happening beneath the surface of our awareness.
It really is. And Husserl doesn't stop there.
Oh, no.
He goes on to argue that even our perception of objects, the things we see and touch, is a temporal process,
Okay.
shaped by this interplay of retention, pretension, and intentionality.
So when I see a tree,
Yeah.
it's not just like a static image in my mind.
Right.
It's a dynamic temporal object.
That's right.
Constantly being formed by my consciousness across time.
You're getting it.
Okay.
We're not passively receiving sensory data.
Okay.
We're actively constructing our perception, drawing on past experiences, our knowledge, and even our expectations of how that object might change in the future.
This is totally changing how I think about perception.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much more active and dynamic than we realize.
It is.
And that's what Husserl wants us to see, right?
Yeah.
He's challenging us to move beyond this kind of simple, mechanical view of time and perception.
Okay.
To recognize the complex, dynamic interplay between our consciousness, time, and the world.
I have to admit, this is all a lot to take in.
It is.
But it's incredibly exciting
It is exciting.
to think about time and perception in this way.
It's incredibly rewarding, too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, understanding how our minds shape our experience of time can give us this much deeper understanding of ourselves and our place in the world.
Okay, so we've explored how intentionality influences our experience of time.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, did Husserl talk about how different kinds of experiences
Yes.
have their own unique structures in time?
He absolutely did. Husserl argued that different types of experiences actually have their own, like, internal temporalities.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
Okay.
For example, the way we experience a melody is different from how we experience a simple sound.
Okay.
And both of those are different from how we understand, like, a mathematical concept.
So it's not just that time is subjective,
Yeah.
but that different types of experiences have their own, like, time signature, so to speak.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
He calls these temporal objects.
Temporal objects, okay?
right.
Because they're not like objects in the traditional sense, like a
Yeah.
chair or a table.
No. Yeah.
But they have their own temporal structure and unity.
Right.
Okay.
So can you give me an example of what, like, a temporal object might be?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine listening to a piece of music.
Yeah.
Right? The melody isn't just this, like, bunch of random notes.
Right.
It's a unified whole that unfolds over time.
Okay.
Each note has its place within the melody, and the melody itself has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Right.
That's a temporal object.
So the melody exists in time, but it also has its own internal structure and unity.
Exactly. And our consciousness is what creates that unity.
Okay.
Our minds actively shape the experience of the melody,
Right.
connecting those notes into this coherent whole.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like watching a movie, right?
Yeah.
We're not just seeing a bunch of separate images.
Right?
We're experiencing a story unfolding in time.
That's right.
Our minds are actively creating that story,
Yeah.
connecting the images and filling in the gaps.
And that's why Husserl's work is so important.
Right.
He's showing us that time isn't just some, like, external objective reality ticking away.
Right.
It's something we actively construct and experience through our consciousness.
This is seriously mind-bending stuff.
It is.
It seems like Husserl's ideas about time can help us understand not just our perception of the world,
Yeah.
but also things like memory, imagination, even our sense of self.
It's all connected.
It is. Wow. Husserl believed that time is the foundation
Yeah.
upon which we build our entire experience of the world, including our experience of ourselves.
This is getting deeper and deeper.
Okay, we're going deep.
What other kind of fascinating insights does Husserl offer in his exploration of internal time consciousness?
Well, he digs into the complexities of how we perceive change and duration.
Okay.
And he even tackles this big question.
Yeah.
Is there even such a thing as an objective flow of time?
Now, that's a question I've always pondered.
Yeah.
It feels like time is constantly moving forward, but is that just an illusion?
It's one of the biggest philosophical mysteries. And Husserl doesn't give us any easy answers.
Right.
But he does give us a framework for thinking about this really profound question
Okay.
in a new and illuminating way.
I'm ready to tackle those big questions head on.
All right, let's do it.
Let's continue our deep dive into part 3 and see what other kind of mind-blowing insights Husserl has in store for us. Welcome back. We are in the final stretch of our deep dive into Edmund Husserl's The Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness, and let me tell you, my mind is officially blown wide open.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff.
It really is. We've been on quite a journey
I have.
exploring how our consciousness shapes our experience of time.
Yeah, we've uncovered how our minds weave together the past, present, and future using these incredible tools of retention, pretension, and memory.
Right, and we've talked about how all of this ties into intentionality, that our consciousness is always actively reaching out and engaging with something.
That's right.
But now it's time to face the ultimate question. Is there even such a thing as an objective flow of time? I mean, it feels like time is constantly moving forward, but is that just an illusion created by our minds?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Husserl, he doesn't give us a simple yes or no answer.
Okay.
In fact, he suggests that the very idea of an objective flow of time might be a misconception.
Wait, are you saying time doesn't actually flow? But how can that be? It seems like everything around us is constantly changing, always moving from the present into the past.
Well, remember, Husserl is really focused on our lived experience of time, what he calls phenomenological time.
Okay.
And he argues that this experience isn't a simple linear flow, but a much more complex interaction between retention and protention.
Right.
And how our consciousness actively constructs our sense of time.
So it's not that time itself isn't flowing,
Yeah.
but our experience of it is much more nuanced
Right.
and dynamic than just a steady stream.
Exactly. Our consciousness is always shaping and reshaping our sense of time. It's not like we're just passengers on a river being swept along by a current. We're actively involved in creating our own temporal reality.
This makes me think about how we talked about the difference between objective time
Yeah.
and phenomenological time.
Right.
Objective time, like what we measure with clocks, might be a helpful tool, but it doesn't capture the richness and complexity of how we actually experience time.
You got it. Husserl wants us to understand that our experience of time is so much richer than just the ticking of a clock.
Right.
It's constantly evolving, shaped by our memories, our anticipations, and how our consciousness structures our perception.
Okay, I get that, but if there's no objective flow of time, how do we explain that feeling that time is always moving forward?
Right.
We all experience that sense that things are changing, that the present is slipping into the past.
Husserl attributes that feeling of movement to the constant emergence of new now points in our consciousness.
Okay.
Each now kind of arises, we grasp it, and then it fades into the past, creating this sense of flow.
So it's not that time is objectively moving, but our consciousness is always generating new moments of now, which gives us this impression of a timeline that's constantly advancing.
Precisely. Think of it like a movie projector.
Oh.
The film itself is static, right? It's just a series of still images, but the rapid succession of those images creates the illusion of movement.
Right.
Our consciousness is doing something similar with time by constantly creating new now moments.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
It definitely makes this whole idea of time not objectively flowing a bit easier to grasp.
Oh, good.
But if our experience of time is so subjective and constructed, does that mean there's no such thing as objective time at all?
Right.
Were you saying clocks and calendars are just arbitrary?
Husserl wouldn't say they're arbitrary. He acknowledges that objective time, the way we measure it, it's useful for certain things.
Okay.
But he cautions against confusing it with how we actually experience time.
So it's like objective time is a helpful tool, but it's not the whole story.
Exactly. Think of it like a map.
Okay.
A map is great for navigating, but it can't capture the full experience of actually being in a place.
Right.
Objective time is similar. It's a way to measure duration.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't capture the richness and complexity of our lived temporal experience.
Wow, this is really making me rethink everything I thought I knew about time.
I know, it's pretty wild.
It's not just this external force marching us toward the future.
Right.
It's an integral part of how we experience and understand the world.
And that's the beauty of Husserl's work.
Yeah.
He's challenging us to question something so fundamental as time and recognize the active role our consciousness plays in shaping how we experience reality.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. But how can we actually apply these insights about time consciousness to our everyday lives?
Well, I think Husserl's work really encourages us to be more mindful of our experience of time,
Okay.
to notice how our memories, our anticipations, and our intentional focus are shaping our perception of the world around us.
It's almost like we're time travelers, constantly navigating between the past, present, and future.
That's a great way to put it. And by becoming more aware of those dynamics, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the incredible complexity of our own consciousness.
It's amazing to think that something as seemingly simple as time can reveal so much about who we are and how we experience the world.
It is.
I know I'll never look at time the same way again.
Me neither.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into Edmund Husserl's The Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. It's been a challenging but incredibly rewarding journey.
It has.
We've uncovered some truly profound insights into the nature of time, the role of consciousness, and the intricate relationship between the two.
And if you're feeling a little mind blown right now, don't worry, you're not alone.
You're not alone. Husserl's ideas are definitely not for the faint of heart, but they offer a powerful new perspective on some of life's most fundamental questions.
Yeah, and we encourage you to continue exploring these questions.
Yeah.
Maybe even dive deeper into Husserl's work yourself.
Absolutely.
And most importantly, stay curious and keep those minds open to new ways of understanding the world around you.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that time consciousness humming.